All right,
So
Sid
yeah,
Rob, welcome back. Start over again. But we
yeah,
got into the chat talking about how you went to school, you took some courses, you're now a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and how that's been going for you so far. And you were explaining to me exactly what's all involved with being a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters. You ended up finishing with it's not something you were going to do forever, but can you please explain just once more what that all entails? I know that it is filling a void for someone who doesn't have a sister or a brother or someone that's in low income or whatever it may be. Can you just give us a little overview on that again?
yeah, absolutely. So basically, what we do at the agency is we provide youth in the community with another caring adult in their life. So, people who come into our programs could really be from any walk of life looking for a big brother or a big sister for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah.
But it really is that mentoring relationship that really helps to empower these youth and, really help to put them on a positive track in their life.
And so how long have you been a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters now?
So I've worked there for about a year and a half now.
Okay, and have you been like in a management role since because of your schooling, or are you right now? Like I know my sister Hillary, she actually did sign up for a couple of years where she was a big sister. So she
Yeah.
took out like a group, like sometimes she took a group, I think. Does that
Yeah,
make
so there
sense?
are like a few different programs. So like our main core program is the one-to-one mentoring. But we also do like in-school programming. And then, not every agency is like run exactly the same. So
Okay.
Big Brothers Big Sisters London and area may have a few different programs than the Oxford County branch does. I don't know if that's the one that Hillary did hers at, but um
I think Hillary did hers in Ingersoll.
in Ingersoll. Okay, so Oxford, yeah. So they may have a few different programs, but we do have some group programs. So that would make sense if she did hers in a group because we do offer some of that as well.
And I don't think it was like full time in a group. I know that she did have a little girl that she had for like, I think she did like every week for months, but I think she did take
Yeah.
out groups at some points. But what brings you to want to do this? What brings you to? Obviously, everyone should hopefully have some kind of caring part in their heart to go and help people that need it, but to do it
Mhm.
all the time, like what brings you to do that? Like what pushes you to try and give back that much?
I think it's just really important for me to have like a lot of passion and purpose in my work. I think that's just like a core value of mine that what I'm spending the most of my life doing, which as we do, we spend most of our lives working. It's just really important to me
True.
that the work that I'm doing is impactful and it's purposeful. And for me, I feel like I do this in a lot of different ways, but nonprofit really became a big interest of mine, I guess, really when I learned that people who work at nonprofits get paid and that it's an actual job. I think that that was something that I didn't really know about growing up. I always thought that people who worked at nonprofits were volunteers. And so just because so much of my life growing up and through high school was being involved in the community and volunteering and for different organizations, it was just really cool to kind of piece it together that I could actually do that for full-time work.
You were in my personal opinion, you were always that type of person. Like you were
Yeah.
always like a big part in the school with putting stuff together, being part of like the student council, and you always did go and involve yourself with everything you possibly could. I'm pretty sure you're pretty busy
Yeah.
as a teenager, but um if someone wanted to join or be a part of Big Brothers, is it a huge process? Like is it not in that kind of way, but some people might get turned away from doing it because it's just so much effort before even being able to help someone. Is
Mhm.
it an easy process or is it difficult?
Um, it's a pretty lengthy commitment. As a big brother or a big sister, it's a minimum of a 1 year commitment.
Which
And the
makes
reason
complete
for
sense.
this, yeah, it is a big ask, right? It's not like you're just going to volunteer for a day at a golf tournament or at the food bank, right? It's a 1 year commitment. And the reason why the commitment is so long is because these children and youth that you're, going to be matched up with often have people in their lives that aren't present for long periods of time. So, as their big brother or big sister, we really want to make sure that you're committed to being that caring adult in their life for at least 1 year. And that developmental relationship is really what they need. They need to depend on you to, show up every week when you say that you're going to show up because oftentimes a lot of these kids already have a lot of people in their life who don't follow through on those types of promises. So as a big brother or big sister, like I said, it's a pretty lengthy screening process as well. There's a lot of training, interviews, things like that are kind of involved with the matching process, and then that 1-year commitment. However, I always tell people, if you don't have the capacity to volunteer once a week for an hour or so for a full year, you can always impact the organization by giving a donation. So, a monthly gift of, $10, $15 really helps to run our programs to help us serve more kids. So I always say, if you can't volunteer your time, you can always give money and still make a really big impact.
It's a great way to put it. And I bet you, like, do you guys have the case where there's a lot of people that try and get involved in this and then find out that it's an hour every single week for 52 weeks and then back out?
Well, my job at the agency isn't actually involved with the matching process. So I'm the fund development manager. So my job focuses on our donors, our special events, and basically anything that has to do with bringing money in for the agency. However, I do know that that is a very common thing that our service delivery team deals with, especially with students who are just in the city for, the 8-month school year. A lot of them can't commit to the full year, which is why we also do offer the in-school programming too, which can often be a better fit for students who are looking to volunteer. So I definitely think that people know in the application it's a 1-year commitment. So I would probably say that, yeah, it would be often that people would see that and then decide, okay, I don't know if I can commit to that.
Fair enough. I do. It's nice to hear that. And obviously, I didn't think that this wasn't the case, but to make them sit down for a year, because it truly does make sense when you talk about a lot of the homes that these people are coming from, or these children are coming from, to have people that are constantly bailing on them or not showing up for their events or not showing up for any of their extracurricular stuff. It is a good thing to make sure that someone's at least sticking with them every week and making sure they're on time and showing up for them. And when you grew up, like, I don't know much about you personally. I know I went to high school with you, and I know the activities and stuff you were involved in at school. Did you grow up with any sisters or brothers?
Yeah, so I have 3 sisters. I have
Wow.
2 sisters on my mom's side and 1 sister on my dad's side. They're all younger than me. I'm the oldest.
The oldest. Okay, so it wasn't this specific organization. Was this to get your foot in the door and help people right now and get some experience under your belt, helping someone, and then start focusing on whatever you want to do next? Or this was like a personal thing, like you never had a brother, or like was it ever anything personal that brought you to start going into organizations like this?
Not that brought me to Big Brothers Big Sisters. One of my professors in my grad program, she was the executive director or the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters in London, and I just really admired her. I admired her teaching style, her mentorship, and she had a lot of experience in the sector. And I just approached her and asked, I said, can I do my internship with you? To be quite honest, I didn't really care where she worked. I just really wanted to work under her leadership and guidance. However, I will say that since being at the agency and working there, I've definitely been able to, I guess, really relate to a lot of the children and youth that we serve, and also identify some people in my life who I guess would have acted as that big sister for me when I needed it. And at the time, I didn't really realize that that was the role that they were playing in my life. But now that I'm in this work every day, learning of the impact of mentoring and how important these developmental relationships are, I am really reflective in a lot of my work, which makes it even more purposeful and meaningful for me.
Damn, having a mentor like that would be sweet, especially leaving college or university or whatever you happen to be a part of. To have that person to see the success that they've gotten in their life and to be able to push for that and have them guide you to be that person or at least excel in that type of career is really nice to have. Was it a lot of people like in college and stuff or in high school that were your big sister to you? Like that's what you said when it made you realize how much you actually did rely on these people to help you through maybe some difficult times in your life?
hmm Yeah. The particular person, and hopefully she doesn't mind that I share this on here, was actually Miss Howison. So she was one of our guidance counselors that we had, at Glendale. And she was, the staff advisor for a lot of the clubs that I was involved with in high school. And we did, create a really strong relationship, a really strong friendship. And, this carried on after high school. And she is still someone who I do keep in touch with. And so it's, like I said, at the time, you see them as a mentor, see them as a teacher that you look up to. But when I've,
Definitely.
started this job and in this work, I really started to reflect on how she did feel like that big sister for me. And I actually texted her a few months ago with that little reflection. So she definitely was that person for me.
That's awesome. I think that truly mental health, as much as this is going to be such a weird way to word this. In high school, like you don't really think about it as much. You don't really think about mental health. You don't really think, or at least personally, I didn't.
Hmm
Or realize that you actually had mental health issues. It wasn't addressed as much as I thought it maybe should be, but it also, if I think about trying to explain it to a kid right now in high school, that's only problem is waking up for school and showing up to class, like, or their only like main agenda to have to do it'd be hard for me at that age to try and think that I had mental health issues.
Right.
One of the things that I did interview Mr. Gooding, and one of the things I regret is not reaching out more about certain stuff that was affecting me as a high schooler, like whether or not it's that I didn't think I fit with a certain clique, or I didn't think I was excelling at something when I should have, or I couldn't focus, or whatever it may have been at the time. I wish I would have used it more then, and I don't think I would need it as more now. But
Right.
I don't think mental health, especially in Mr. Gooding's age when he went to high school, or when Mr. Parlow went to high school, or all the guidance teachers now, I believe that mental health was pushed to the side, or you were weaker, or it wasn't addressed as much as it definitely should be. And I'm a big advocate for trying to push for that. Only recently, like within the past couple of years, like it truly to me takes something usually terrible to happen for you to realize, like, okay, there is some stuff that I can't control. I need help dealing with, or I need help to address. Um, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent like I always do, but regardless, the guidance teachers I believed were such a huge part of a lot of people's lives who were of like in the mindset to go and reach out and try and access that help. I didn't do that, but you clearly did. And you believe that over the time, is Miss Helsden?
Howison.
Howison. You believe that she helped you a lot through your high school years?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think that I was, always someone who was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. I excelled in community involvement, sports, and academics. It was kind of just an all around thing for me. But, she really did keep me grounded, and she was always there when I needed something. And I think that just like I said, having that person that you can go to, like no matter what it's about, with no judgment, there you can count on them, you can rely on them. She was like that person for me, definitely.
Do you think that she noticed it in you, or did you go to her?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think that as our relationship and our friendship after I graduated high school continued to evolve, I think that it just became exactly that. It became a friendship. I think that she probably knew that I needed the support and the guidance, and I didn't really see it like that. I didn't really see us working together and her being the staff advisor for, Key Club and, all of these other things that I did at school. I didn't really see it as something that I needed. It was more just something that I did. But I mean, I'm sure if I was to ask her now if, she thought that that was something I needed at that time in my life, she would probably say yes, right? Because teachers, guidance counselors, mentors, anyone with that capacity is, really able to identify that in younger people.
Now, now, seeing as how much it helped you to address your mental health issues, or to at least just to have someone to talk to, about things that were going on in your life, being so busy, trying to keep your mind busy all the time to maybe avoid other things in your life. Have you ever thought have you ever expressed that to people? I know that you did send me an article that was written up that it seemed like someone was writing it about you.
Yeah, so that was from an interview that I did with an organization called FEMAP. FEMAP stands for First Episode Mood and Anxiety Program. And so that was someone else wrote that article, and it was through an interview, like kind of very similar to this. We hopped on Zoom and I shared my story, and she wrote the article. So for me, I guess, are you kind of asking like, when did I sort of notice that I needed help with my mental health? Is that, or when did I start
Yeah.
sharing my story or my struggle? Is that sort of what you're asking?
When did you, yeah, that's a good place to start, is when did you actually originally notice that you may need some guidance or some help with what you're trying to deal with?
Yeah. So for me, I kind of had this realization that I needed support with my mental health. It was when I was in second year university. So we had a charity fashion show at school, and the proceeds of the fashion show were going to FEMAP. And I had never heard of FEMAP before. I didn't know what it was, but they had a patient from FEMAP come and speak at the beginning of the fashion show and just share her story and how much FEMAP had helped her with her mental health issues. And while she was sharing her story, I just was sitting in the audience and I resonated so deeply with everything that she was sharing. The girl that she was describing that she was prior to going to FEMAP was the person that I felt that I was at that time, because I just resonated
Wow.
so much and so deeply with her story. And that was when I first learned of FEMAP. And following that event was when I reached out to them to seek support, because her story inspired me so much. And she was now in a place in her life where she had stable, healthy mental health. And I really wanted to be in that place. And so it was really through hearing her story that inspired me to reach out to FEMAP and get support.
Now, is that a free service or is that a free seminar to go and listen to people's stories?
Um, like the patient stories?
Yeah.
Well, she was just, it's kind of like how, like at the beginning of a Relay for Life event for Canadian Cancer Society, how there will be a
Oh,
cancer
okay.
survivor there, so that you kind of can see the person whose money you're donating is going to
Okay.
help. It was similar. So this fashion show that was happening at my university, you had to buy a ticket, but all the proceeds were going to FEMAP. So she was just there to basically talk about how accessing this free service at FEMAP helped her along her journey, so that you could really connect your dollar to a story.
And just someone telling the story like that, like that's why I try and like, it's almost like I found a lane, but it's a lane that it honestly helped me a lot too. But to talk to people about their story and have people relate, like it's a
Mhm.
weird feeling when someone can just say to you like thank you. Like I either, like you said, you didn't know what you were going through, but you realized that the person that she was before getting help was you, and it made
Mhm.
her sit down and think like, or made you sit down and think, I could use some help too. Then that specific organization, FEMAP, is that a free service or that's counseling, like that's a
Mhm.
paid service?
No, it's a free service. So it's run out of LHSC here
What
in
else is
London. And the services are provided to youth. I believe it's aged 18 to 24, I think is the age window. And the services and the treatments, everything are completely free. The only stipulation is that as a patient, you have to kind of be a part of their like research. So every now and again, as a patient, we would have to just, fill out a questionnaire or do a survey or something like that. But I was just so grateful to be accessing these services that I know I wouldn't otherwise be able to afford, that I was always happy to help them in any way, which is also why I was open to being interviewed for that article that they wrote, because I know that I wouldn't have found that service without listening to someone else's story. So I just truly feel that it was the least that I could do for them because of all that they had done for me.
Now, do they ever run, like, I don't know how much you know about the organization. Obviously, you were a part of it and did an interview for them, so you got to know some things about it. But do they ever do seminars where it is just people explaining their story?
I don't think so. I know that a lot of their fundraising events or different marketing and communications initiatives, they will often interview past patients. It's just something that's very sensitive for a lot of people.
For
It's
sure.
very difficult for a lot of people to talk about their struggles with their own mental health or to share their stories. So I don't think that there's, ever like a story time or like an event per se where people are just sharing their stories. I think that would be very impactful, but I don't think that that's something that they do right now. But they definitely highlight stories like mine in their donor newsletters or communications and things like that. And they do have past patients come and speak at different fundraising events that they do and whatnot.
Yeah. I just think it would be such a huge thing to like even have one of those people go in like that's very comfortable telling their story. They've done it many times. Like obviously it does affect them, but sometimes telling the story makes it easier. Like it obviously still sucks, but explain to someone, having someone be like, you know what, like you like if you could go talk to that girl right now that originally told that story that you
Mhm.
related to make you realize that you should go get some help as well, just be able to go tell that person like thank you, like it'd be
Right.
so worth it. But to have one of those people go in and tell one story at every high school just to like help maybe some of the younger generation notice that they may have mental health issues before it becomes out of hand or uncontrollable, which I'm assuming it doesn't, it may become uncontrollable. I luckily took control of mine in the second I possibly could. But it'd just be nice to know that the service was there sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So back, we were talking about Big Brothers Big Sisters and what you're doing with them. You had you ended the original Zoom by saying that you didn't work to stay there forever. Is there an overall like huge goal for you? Like is there an organization that you just want to be a part of so badly, or your own organization, or what's your overall main goal?
With my work or like just life or
Overall, everything. Main goal
overall?
for work with helping with the organizations
Mhm.
would be a good place to start.
Yeah, so I would say in relation to nonprofit, there's an organization that's based out of Toronto and they're called Community Food Centers Canada. And when I was in university, I did my placement at one of their locations, which the closest one to here is in Stratford. And the reason why I love it so much is because I think in the social service sector, my biggest passion is in food insecurity because I truly believe that it's really hard for people to, get out of homelessness, work on their mental health, recover from an addiction, gain employment if they don't have access to healthy, wholesome foods that are nourishing their bodies. And I think that so many people just don't know how to feed themselves well. And so many people don't have access to good quality food. And so I think that on a soul level, that's something I'm very passionate about is just helping people heal themselves through food. And this organization in particular, they're very different from a food bank in the sense that participants coming and accessing their services actually receive fresh produce, fresh meat, fresh, dairy products. They're not receiving canned goods. And in order to actually receive anything, any food or food product, the participant has to participate in a food skills workshop. So this could be in the greenhouse, learning how to garden and grow fruits and vegetables. It could be in the
Wow.
kitchen, learning how to cook and prepare a meal. And so it's just an amazing holistic approach to actually getting to the root cause of food insecurity. So I would say in the realm of nonprofit, that would be my dream organization, somewhere that I would really want to work. However, I also recognize that I have a very entrepreneurial spirit and I, have a kind of this fine line that I walk between, wanting to fully work for myself, but then also wanting to make an impact and For me, I don't see the need to create my own nonprofit. I think that there's already so many amazing organizations out there doing great work that I would rather support someone, like Community Food Centers Canada, that is really in align with how I view the world and how I want to help the world. But I'm actually just kind of at a place in my life right now where I'm just kind of figuring out sort of what that next step for me will be. I'm very happy and fulfilled working at Big Brothers Big Sisters, but I'm not sure what my next step will be. I'm kind of just, with the pandemic and everything, been sort of laying low and just taking some
I
time
hear
to
that.
just focus on myself and just figure out what I want to do next.
Definitely. Where do you even where do you even like start to think that that's what you want to do? Like, do you like research that? Did you like sit down in school and they were like, these are all the different types of nonprofit organizations, these are some of the ones that are local? Is that how it kind of piqued your interest? But I've never even heard of that, where it's like fresh
Yeah.
produce, fresh meat, like, and getting them to do something like a workshop or something to be able to learn how to do it for themselves is super cool, instead of
Yeah.
just like handing them a can,
Mhm. Oh, it's an amazing organization. I found out about the organization when I was in university. So when I was in my fourth year, I took a class on food insecurity in Canada was the name of the class. And my professor, she actually was a part-time prof, but she worked full-time at the Community Food Center in Stratford. And so her organization was an option for our placement. And so, because I had this growing passion for food and health and nutrition, that was like my number one choice. And I guess to answer your question, I came to have this growing passion for this once I took ownership over my own health. Because when I went off to school and, I had tore my ACL, my MCL, my meniscus, like in grade 12 playing soccer. And once
Oh
all
my
those things
gosh,
kind of
I
happened
remember
and were
that.
taken away from me, I didn't know how to take care of myself because playing competitive soccer was the only thing I ever did for fitness. That was gone. And then now I'm not living at home. Right. So I'm having to like eat at the cafeteria at university and cook for myself. And I didn't know how to do any of that. So once I took ownership over my own health and started learning all of these things, that's when I became passionate about it, because I saw how my physical health and my mental health changed through just from my diet. It was crazy to me. Like, I honestly didn't know that my body could feel as good as it did. And once I realized that for myself, I realized, man, like, there's so many people out here in the community that I live in who don't know where they're getting their next meal. So they must really be feeling, the brain fog, feeling tired and fatigued. And like I kind of said, how can you focus on recovering from an addiction and getting clean or getting a home or getting a job when you can't even think because you're so hungry? And so I guess I truly feel that everything starts with food. And that's just, something that I truly believe. So Community Food Centers Canada was introduced to me through my professor, as I mentioned. And when I did my placement there, I just really saw how impactful the organization was and how different it was from a food bank. Like, food banks shouldn't even exist, in my opinion. I totally think that they should be replaced with this model.
Wow. I like, not in like a joking way. I need to adapt that in my life. Like, I'm always on the run. I'm always on the road for work. I travel for sales all the time, every day, 24/7. And then I come home and I do this. And like, I try and wolf a meal down, or I eat on the road, or I always eat so poorly. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, why am I tired? Why do I feel so sluggish? Why am I like procrastinating? Why? Like,
Mhm.
it's just, it does make a lot of sense, because I've had the weeks where I go where like I'm like, I'm gonna do this starting Monday, is like my famous last words.
Yeah.
Starting Monday, I'm gonna start eating my greens, I'm gonna start eating lean meat, I'm gonna start portioning my food categories properly. Like, always have like such a big plan. And by Wednesday, I'm mucking nuggets and I'm back to the drawing board,
Yeah.
starting the next Monday. But that's awesome to see that you have a passion for it based on something that you've experienced in your own life. I remember when you hurt your knee. I didn't remember exactly what had happened, but I knew that you wore a leg brace forever, and obviously you
Yeah.
did quite a big damage to it. but for you to have that passion because of something that you had that helped you so much in your life with not only experiencing that with your leg and then going to school and having your mental health issues and then changing your diet just made you think clearer and just helped your life so much. And now know that that's what you want to do to help other people in the world. It's just one thing I always said is find something like for your work. Obviously you always want to be happy because like you said, it's a majority of your life. You're doing it all the time. But the best way to find something that makes you happy is something that you're actually passionate about.
100%.
So that's incredible. That's amazing. Like, good for you. Like, good for you to have those ambitions and those dreams. And I always saw that with you in high school. Like, I was not the kid that was signing up for all the extracurricular activities and all that stuff. So kudos to you for pushing forward to do that with Big Brothers Big Sisters and having a dream to go such an amazing organization. Stratford's so close, and I didn't even know that existed. So when it came down to like the foods and stuff like that, when you went to school, you changed your diet, you were starting to get into like the mental health stuff. You went to it was FEMA. I'm completely butchering it.
Yep. Oh, FEMA. Yep.
Okay. All right. So that wasn't as bad as I thought.
No.
When you started doing that, was it just like a regular like counsel session? Like you went and you talked one-on-one, you had like an hour a couple times a week, or how did that all
so I started there and I worked with a psychotherapist. And so essentially what I was doing, I was meeting one-on-one with her. And I did that for an extended period of time. And then I also participated in a group program. And the group program was specifically for females who had been through trauma. Wasn't really specified as to what type of trauma. So it's not like we all knew what one another went through before joining this group programming. But the group programming was run by a psychotherapist and a social worker. And that program was really powerful. I think that a lot of my one-on-one sessions were obviously more individual, but it was more so trying to get out of this survival mode, because at that time, I was really in survival mode. I had no idea how much I had suppressed in my life up to that point, that I was really just in that fight or flight mode. And I was just trying to cope with my day-to-day life. And so that was really what my one-on-one sessions were about, was just trying to get me out of that survival mode. But in my group programming, I really learned a lot about mental health. I learned a lot about the brain and how the brain responds to trauma, how the body responds to trauma. And it really made me feel validated, and it made me feel a lot more normal, because I think one of the big problems with struggling with mental health is that you think that you're crazy. And I don't like to use that word lightly, but you oftentimes really do feel like you're out of control, or that you don't know how to regulate your emotions. And that can be like a really scary thing to go through. And during those group programming, because it was more educational, I guess, in the sense that it was really helping us all connect, like the actual facts, right? Like we're connecting, okay, when I act like this, or when I feel this way, or when my body responds like this, it's a trauma response. And that trauma response comes from XYZ. So getting that education was actually really empowering for me, because it just made me feel very validated, as I mentioned, and it just made me realize that nothing's wrong with me. I've just had some pretty significant events happen in my life that are, causing me to be in this state that I am right now, because it's never been addressed. But then it was very hopeful for me, because I knew that if I addressed it as I was by accessing the services at FEMA, I always saw that light at the tunnel. Like I always knew that by virtue of being there, participating, and being an active participant in my healing, I knew that things were going to get better.
Wow. That's not lightly. Like it's a cool way. Like I know when I sat down for therapy for my first couple sessions, it was also with a psychotherapist. But it was never addressed that way. And I think it's a really cool way to, or not cool way, but a nice way to start to realize like the things I'm going through. First off, I'm not alone. Second off, it's a normal reaction for my body to have because of what I've been through.
Mm-hmm.
wow, it's just crazy to think about like how many people must be in those programs going through that shit. It's just, I'm sorry about the language, but it's just crazy to think about how many people are affected by mental health so often. And to be able to sit down in a group like that, like, did you ever do the sessions where anyone ever spoke about the trauma that they had been through?
Yeah, definitely. There were, lots of different, I think there was maybe 10 to 12 of us that were in the group. And, again, it was never like a story time or a sharing circle where we went around one by one, but oftentimes when we would discuss how things were going in our life, or maybe how something that was taught to us applied to our individual life, we would always share. It was a very safe, welcoming space. And so I definitely did get to, hear from a lot of different people and different things that they had gone through that were much different from the trauma that I had been through myself.
Now, when you talk about telling your story, like when you had that article and that interview written about you, when you talk about telling your story, do you tell people like the whole thing, everything that actually happened to you throughout your younger life, or do you talk to people about like there was some trauma that had happened, and then you start from how you started to help yourself with it?
I think it just depends on like the context. I feel that because I have taken my, healing journey and my mental health so seriously over the past couple of years, I feel that it's truly given me the strength to be able to share and be okay with that, right? Sometimes we can share our stories and get almost like a vulnerability hangover, right? Where we share too much and maybe we're not in a place in our journey where we can share because we're still so sensitive or the wound is still so raw. But because I have, had these interviews with FEMAP and, I'm very supportive of friends or anyone in my life who may be struggling, I feel that because of how open I've been, I'm definitely open to sharing. It just, obviously depends on the context, but I'm definitely not opposed to sharing my story, especially when it's to help people, to, make people know that they're not alone, and to maybe share some things that I've done that have been helpful for me in the past.
Now, now talking about it like that, like you're at the point in your journey of addressing your mental health and getting yourself back to being happy and being you. Um, do you feel like you would be willing to tell your story on here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I would personally, I know that there was some stuff that I went down when we were in high school, and I never really, it was always like kept such a tight secret, and it was really none of my business to begin with. So I never really heard anything about it, but I always did. I knew that something had happened with you and your family, but it's all the table's all yours. I would definitely like to hear your
Yeah,
story.
yeah, for sure. No, and I appreciate you asking. So yeah, when I was in grade 11, my mom and her partner at the time had recently separated. And I was basically, my sisters and I were at school and we were just called out of class. And when we went down to the office, all of us were at different schools at the time. There was a police officer there who told us that our mom was a victim of domestic violence and that she was getting airlifted to the hospital in London. And so at that specific time, we didn't necessarily know the details or what happened per se, but we knew that it was something serious. And so, later on, we found out that our mom, like my mom, was a victim of a murder suicide, attempted murder suicide. And so this event was, obviously very tragic, obviously very serious. Um, both my mom and her ex-partner survived, but they were, my mom was in the hospital in an induced coma for 2 weeks. And, this was a very, difficult thing to go through at that time in my life. Being in grade 11,
100%.
my sisters were much younger. And, there was just a lot happening. But as, the older sister, I really stepped into that role of, nurturing. And so I really took care of everyone's needs but my own. And, I don't even think that I really kind of cried or had a breakdown about the whole situation until like a week after it happened. Because again, I was just in this flight or fight mode, right? Like you're experiencing this and
Yeah,
you don't really
100%.
know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know what's going on. And so it really, hit me about a week after, but again, it was kind of all such a blur. Happened on a Wednesday and I went back to school on Monday. And really, I just didn't want to just kind of keep sitting around and thinking about it. Like I wanted to have my life go back to normal as much as possible. And so, I just kind of started to pick up more things. I would, we've mentioned a few times over the course of this call that I was already very involved in extracurriculars and sports and my academics, and I had a job. I worked with your sister at Shoppers. But, I think that this really caused me to want to get more involved. I wanted to be more distracted from what was going on at home, or wondering about how my mom was doing or how my family was, or what the future of this situation was going to be. And so no one in my life would have saw these things as bad, right? Because it's not like I was getting into trouble with the police or getting into drugs or stealing or doing anything that was bad. So these distractions for me came very welcomed because I just wanted to numb that pain that I was feeling. And it wasn't really until I went away for school, when I moved to London and I went to university, when I didn't have any of those distractions anymore. I had no sports, I had no job immediately. I got a job eventually, but it wasn't immediately. I didn't have extracurriculars. I didn't have volunteer activities. I didn't really have, any of that. And so it was my first few years of university where things really flew at me at a mile a minute. And I also had to go to the trial for this incident during my orientation week of my first year of university. So that was also something that was
Bring it all back.
very intense, right? So lots of changes, going to Woodstock every day for the trial, being there for my family, but then going back to residence and, trying to enjoy university life at night.
Trying to focus on universities for one thing. Jeez.
Right. So it was a lot. And, I think that I didn't realize just how much I was struggling because I didn't feel like or seem like I was struggling, right? Because I was numbing out with all these distractions. And so, my first year of school, my grades were not great. I was partying a lot and, really just getting involved in things that were very out of character for me. They were very unusual. And this behavior continued into second year as well. And I think I really started to realize that I was, turning into someone that I didn't want to be, but I also had no idea where to go for help. I had no support. I was way too embarrassed to talk to my family, to talk to my friends. And I just had no, idea of where to go and get help. And as I already mentioned, it wasn't until that fashion show and learning of FEMAP where I felt like I could relate to someone and that I, really needed to reach out because it was getting serious.
Holy crap. Start off by saying like you're incredible. Like I know you're not the type of person that ever sits there and wants their tires pumped or whatever. Like I know you're not that person that just wants the I don't know, the compliments or whatever it may be associated with it, but I don't even know where to start. Like you're a grade 11, you are like a crazy good student. You're in all these extracurricular activities. You're helping with Key Club. You're on student council. You're a part of everything that's possibly offered at the school. Mm-hmm. You're so busy, and it would have been so hard for someone to see that you were struggling if they weren't a good friend of yours or someone close in your life or family. And then you have all these young sisters, and you're trying to kind of raise them, or at least be a big part of their life while you're trying to have your own life and trying to grow up yourself. Oh my God. And then that, like, it's crazy. Yeah. Your journey's absolutely incredible because like, that's so traumatic. Like that's so crazy to be pulled out of high school. It's one of the best years of your life, they say. And you're looking forward to your future and you're so involved in everything. You do everything for everyone else. That's literally you. You do everything for everyone, and then this shit has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how you dealt with it in the time. I know that obviously you say that you just try to stay as busy as you possibly could, but like to have to go through that and like think you're going to lose your mom, and now she's in a coma and she's in London hospital. She's so far away from you. You're still trying to finish high school. You're a part of all these different things, and like your sisters as well. Like I'm so sorry that like those years of your life had to be so impacted because of someone else's horrible mistakes or horrible things that they did. I'm so sorry for you and your family, and I hope your mom's okay now.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's, thankfully doing very well. And, it's definitely something that no one ever thinks that they're going to have to go through in their life, right? I mean,
Definitely not.
you can't predict these things and you don't know what life is going to throw your way. But I was definitely an example of one of those people. You read things and hear things where it says, make sure to check on, the person who always seems like they're okay, or check in on the person who is always taking care of everyone else. I was definitely that person and fit that stereotype. And so I'm just so grateful now, honestly, that I did access the, services that were available to me at the time. And I still also am in active therapy. So it's not something that, anything. I mean, we all have trauma. I mean, even if you come from, an amazing family and an amazing home, there's still trauma. And I think that that's something that we need to kind of talk about more and come to terms with more, that we would all benefit from going to therapy. We all have things that we could work through and work on, and that's okay. That's nothing that you need to be ashamed of. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just very grateful that I did access when I did, because I know that my life wouldn't be where I am today had I not, because I knew the person that I was before this, event happened, and before I started struggling really heavily with my mental health. And I knew that that was within me, but because I had lost that version of myself for a few years, I always wondered when I could, get back to that person. And so now that I am, becoming more reconnected to that person that I, want to be and always, it just feels good. And I know that that is a result of me being that active participant in my healing journey.
Well, good for you. Like for you to like just do that on your own, and like to be able to sit there and evaluate yourself and like take a look in the mirror when you're at that fashion show and that girl is telling her story. For you to look in the mirror and just say like, I have a problem. Like I clearly or not. I don't know. I don't know how to word it without sounding ridiculous.
No, I did have a problem. I had a few
I
problems.
hear you. Trust me, I hear you. I've had my fair share of my issues. So, but for you to be able to sit there and look in the mirror and just address that you know that you had that issue and you needed to deal with it is a huge step to take on your own. Like without having someone else point out that you're acting weird or you seem depressed or you're not yourself, you're not focusing on school as much as you used to. Good for you. Like it's
Yeah.
especially when you're in university and the start of your university, you had to start with a court case to bring it all back. Like
And I mean, I will say too, like, I mean, I definitely had people in my life, mostly my roommates, that were, constantly signaling that I did need help and that something was wrong and that I was, acting in inappropriate ways. And I think that that's just one part of the equation. I never blamed my roommates or, would never put anything on them because I know that I am my own responsibility. However, I think that what would have really helped me at the time was, instead of just everyone telling me that my behavior was inappropriate or I was, acting messed up, that to follow up with that, it was, hey, let's get you some help and I will go with you, or I will help research some things in the area that you can go to. No one was there for that step. And that's the step that's the hardest one to take. And I truly feel that that's why it took so long for me to be able to have the courage to do it on my own, which is why I've, become so passionate about, sharing this with others, because I'm not ashamed of the struggles that I've been through, because we all go through them. And, similar to, why you you shared that at the beginning, that like you feel that through storytelling, we are able to share with one another and really let one another know that they're not alone. So I definitely think that second element is really great, like to remember, we
Yeah.
can all recognize when a friend is, having symptoms of depression, or maybe is
Not
drinking a little
themselves.
bit too much or abusing substances a little bit too much. That's, out of what's typical or out of what's ordinary. But to just point that out to them isn't going to help them get better. Right. But at the same time, we have to also remember that not everyone wants to heal, and that's okay too. And I think that was something that was like really significant for me to learn, because I always wanted everyone else around me to heal the way that I did, or, learn that things can get better, but not everyone wants to do that. And that's okay. So we also have to, remember that this has to start from within, and that we have to make that individual decision that we want to get better, because you can't do that for me and I can't do that for you, just like you can't do that for anyone else in your life.
I do agree with that. And I like the way that you worded that we all have our traumas, because I had my own shit that I went through, completely different than what you did, completely different than what the next person went through. But I know how you feel when it was I did 100% go out on my own to seek counseling, realize that I drive for 9 hours a day. I talk to 100 different people a day, constantly turning my mind off. And whenever I hopped in that truck to go to the next place, that's when I would cry. That's when I would listen to music that reminded me of dad, or I would always like look to try and put myself back into being upset for some reason. Like, as weird as that may sound, I used to just like put on the music that reminded me of him, cry, get it out of my system, get on to the next place, shut it off, gone. Like, it was just a weird thing that I was doing that I noticed in myself, that I was like, why am I seeking the things that are making me upset? Why am I wanting to get to that stage of like being upset? And then I realized it was a stage of like wanting it to feel real, because I never got to the point where it felt like it was fucking real. And then I seek counseling alone. And like, I get what you mean with like your roommates. Like, I had people reach out, like I had friends reach out and say like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, you're drinking a little more. Like, I had my binges where I went like every weekend. I went pretty hard for months. And I had some friends reach out saying that they noticed it. And it's just, I get what you mean. Like, they're the same people that'll reach out and say that they noticed you have a problem, but they weren't necessarily the same people that reached out and asked me if I was okay, or asked if I needed help moving to the next step, or pushing
Right.
me to move to the next step. So I get what you mean. I think that it's a lot easier now that I've been through it to be
For
the person
sure.
that reaches out.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
I've reached out to numerous people that are going through stuff, or like Jake and Warren, like they lost their mom, and like right away, like I could relate, and I just was just like, I hope you know that I'm here, and I've reached out since. And it just seems like something that maybe as humans we don't do enough, is check in on everyone and make sure that everyone's okay. And mental health just as a whole isn't addressed enough.
I totally agree.
I really, really appreciate you expressing your story. Obviously this is a public platform, and people will hear your story. And are you comfortable if people reached out to you to ask you about your story, or related to your story?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very comfortable at, setting my own boundaries. So,
Good.
if someone asks something that I'm not comfortable answering, I'm totally happy to share, but I'm also happy to support people or share resources with things that maybe have helped me. And like I said, something that worked for me may not work for someone else, but I'm always happy to share my experience.
If someone who listened to this episode and wanted to reach out to you to ask you, either not even related to your story, but how you had the courage to reach out to the counseling, to sit down in group sessions, to go through all that process in your life, change your diet to change the way that you felt, and to be happier, and really put focus into you more than anyone else at the time, is there a certain way that you'd like them to reach out to you? Like, would you prefer someone emailed you, or followed you, or talked to you on social media? Like, what's the best way to reach you?
I'm pretty open. Email would be fine. My social media would also be fine. I can give you that stuff after, I guess, if you
Yeah,
want.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Right now.
I'll put a small link at the bottom of the video.
Sure.
For anyone's listening to the episode, they can go to the bottom, find your email or their link to social medias. And if anyone feels the that it would help them a lot after hearing your story, or they heard your story and instantly went and seeked help because they realized that they were dealing with the same thing that you were, and they want to thank you for that, then they'll definitely be able to do that. But I thank you so much for coming on here today and telling your story. And it's really nice to talk to you again. Like, I remember in high school, we didn't talk a super large amount, but I always knew you were a good person. You were a person that was open to everyone. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks again for having me.
Definitely. It was such a joy. Hopefully we can get that, the high school reunion set up and see some other old faces we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sydney.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Have a good night.